coming to this press conference. We have just heard the budget, and I think people across Guyana who've listened to the budget might still be trying to figure out what really happened in the National Assembly. They heard the Minister of Finance said that he wanted to stimulate growth and restore confidence in Guyana, particularly confidence in our economy. That's the name of his budget speech. Yet, when they would have listened to the measures announced by the minister, the measures are not going to restore confidence, nor are they going to stimulate growth. So there is a huge disconnect between this budget, its orientation, its stated objective, and the policies, programs, and measures put in place. Huge disconnect. And if there are two words that I can use that I have heard people mention from the time they exited that chamber, the two words were anti-development and anti-poor. I want to take you through the measures. There are so many things that we can say about the budget, but I will leave that for a subsequent press conference. But I just want to take you through the productive sectors. And can anyone tell me a single measure that is designed to enhance productivity or production? In the rice sector, we heard one sentence from the Minister of Finance. In the sugar industry, he said they're putting in $9 billion in subsidy, although the Prime Minister in New York had announced that the budget would have $12 billion in it, and he said it will be $9 billion. In mining, there were no measures to assist the mining sector. Not a single budgetary measure. He spoke about increased production this year and about the two new gold mines that came into being, but both of them were projects developed under the PPP. So there's nothing for mining, nothing really for sugar. In fact, he's giving less than what the Commission of Inquiry suggested and the Prime Minister said their budget will have. Nothing for the rice industry, very little for any other sector of the economy. Nothing for construction, nothing for manufacturing, nothing, very little for tourism. In fact, minimal amongst tourism, because his primary tool for bringing more visitors was the cleanup of the city, $200 million in this year, on top of the $300 million spent last year to clean up the city. That supposed to be a big attraction. So we have not seen any measure to stimulate production. Those are the sectors that have earned and are earning in the country. Under the green economy, what were the initiatives we heard about? Building more public facilities in the park, implementing the plan of the PPP to expand our national protected area system, and putting $40 million in this year's budget to start a building for the EPA. That is all about the green economy. And then, relatedly, we heard him mention the Myla project. So Myla went from last year being a criminal endeavor in last year's budget to their reassessing a Myla. But there is one thing in this budget that I hope that every citizen would listen to carefully. It's what they plan to do in the electricity sector. The Minister of Finance said that there is a $50 million project that they currently have, that they're negotiating a power purchase agreement for at the Hope Solar Farm. This project is being developed by a supporter of the government, and that they plan to buy power at somewhere about half of the price of that GPL is generating at. Now, he gave a figure for GPL generating cost per kilowatt hour of 28 cents. That figure is not just wrong, but it is outrageously wrong. When fuel prices were high in 2012, the figure was about 19 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. We were going to buy power from a miler at 10 cents per kilowatt hour, half of the 2012 numbers for generating power. The price of fuel has tumbled. I do not believe it's more than 14 or 15 cents now per kilowatt hour to generate electricity in GPL. Yet the minister said 28 cents. This is, I believe, to justify buying power from this individual which will stick this country with huge costs beyond that of, contemplated through the construction of the Milers Fall. So that is something that we have to, it's easily tracked down. The media could go and ask GPL, what's your cost of generation? The Minister of Finance said 28 cents. And what was the proposed cost to buy power from a miler? It was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. If it's 28 cents, then we wouldn't save $2 billion in the 20 years from a miler. We'd save close to $4 billion US dollars if the cost of power. That's wrong. So it is something that was so glaring that the people of this country, I believe, need to pay careful attention to. But maybe I should just focus for a moment on the measures themselves, because there will be enough time to talk about the other things. Now, clearly you will see that these measures are not designed to help poor people. Poor people. The pension was increased by a paltry sum, a tiny sum. In fact, $1,200. And what the minister did, he sought to add what took place last year to this year's increase. So he will get 39%. You would recall that we spoke about this. The pensioners have lost in a net sense last year. The increase this year cannot compensate them for the loss of the water subsidy and the electricity subsidy. Our pensioners are poorer under this government than they have been under the PPP government. Secondly, we saw the increase in public assistance. Again, a paltry sum of money. We have seen no increase for wages and salaries. We've had an increase in the threshold that will not make a big difference in people's lives. So this budget has absolutely nothing for poor people. Those were the areas where one would have thought that the government would seek to transfer more resources to the most vulnerable groups in our country. On the other hand, I see a great deal of special interest in this budget. Special interest, new car Importers, and there are few of them, have benefited. New car people, that for vehicles and for tires. Some companies, there is one company particularly that will benefit significantly from this measure on the removing or graduating the excise tax on alcohol. That is, again, special interest. I've seen special interest in treating the foreign service differently. These are all issues relating to special interest. So if I had to look at what people, how this would change people's lives, in fact, Guyana is, people's lives would probably be less, the good life can't start with this budget. People would have a retrogression in their life and their benefits. There are other ominous signs that the minister has announced but has not gone into specifics for. He said, I will amend a raft of legislation to increase taxes and fees for several services. We are yet to know what those will be, but I believe that there are considerable number of services that are enjoyed by Guyanese. Those will be increased, and there's absolutely no transparency about it. Every one of you in this room and across the country now will be faced with something that we had in the past. It was called, there was this ubiquitous tax compliance. You had to, if you wanted to travel, you had to get a tax compliance. If you wanted any service from the government, you had to get a tax compliance. You had to go through a tortuous process. We have seen the return of the tax compliance to Guyana, so that every single one of you here in this country, anytime from now on you have any dealing with the government of Guyana, you have to go, first of all, go into the GRA and get a tax compliance and satisfy them that you have paid all your taxes. This is going to be very, very hard for people, not just rural people, but hinterland persons who will now have to probably travel long distances to come to Georgetown to get this certificate, and before they get any service, including routine services from the government, like applying for a license, etc. This is the big brother kind of approach once again. The GRA will now have a primary part in all of our lives once again. This used to happen in the 1980s. It is a return to an old Burnhamite approach to controlling people and controlling their access to service and their growth in income. I anticipate that after listening to this budget, that the private sector in this country will lose further confidence in our economy, that there is nothing in this budget to help to stimulate them, to help them. In fact, more pressures on the private sector. I anticipate that there will be greater capital flight. I anticipate that all the numbers, the rosy picture painted by the Minister of Finance regarding our balance of payment and the strength of our banking system, that they will deteriorate and that we will not achieve any of those targets because we will lose confidence, we lose more investment. This budget cannot stimulate investment. It has no new measure to stimulate investment. So on one hand, we'd lose the people and lose their enthusiasm and their capital, those who promote growth, and on the other hand, it will not alleviate or help anyone, poor people. In fact, it will bring greater hardships. Just imagine banning used tires. How many people will be able to afford new tires now. Most of the tires that